Okay, so who doesn't want a little bit of control? Today you're learning about for loops and while loops, which provide you with a little bit of control over your program. They both will help you cycle through code that you would otherwise have to repeatedly type, but they work slightly differently. The for loop over here on the left, when I'm typing in a for loop, I have to know ahead of time how many times I want to cycle through this. So let's say I knew ahead of time that I had exactly 3 students. Notice too how in here it's perfectly acceptable to initialize this integer variable I right within the confines of the for loop. However, I don't have to. I could also initialize it. For example, if I'm going to be using this somewhere else, outside of the for loop, if I want to use I somewhere else, I would then, initialize it here. And I would just use it in the for loop. So I'm going to do that just to show you that now I can use I. The scope of I is throughout the entire program. Otherwise, it would only be good within the for loop. So the for loop has 3 parameters. The first one is the initialization parameter, and that's why I'm calling that I. It's the initial value. And then the comparison, as long as let's start I at 0. And let's say as long as I is less than 3, because that would be 0, 1, and 2, then the last parameter is the controller. So each time I'm going to add 1 to the value of I is what that means. And then everything within a for loop has to be within the confines of the brackets. And then you can put whatever code you want to execute for that for loop. So maybe I would want to print something out. And I can do it that way. Maybe I want to do other things to get some calculations. Maybe I had some other variables, etc., etc. But that's the general gist of a for loop. Now let's say I didn't know ahead of time how many students I have. So let's move over here to the right side of the screen and let's look at a while loop. This time I don't know ahead of time how many students I have, so I might want to put in a while loop. So this time you have to make some kind of a sentinel true. Sentinel means there's going to be a question that I'm going to ask, do you want to keep doing this or do you want to stop? So I'm going to make up a string variable called answer, and I'm going to set that originally equal to yes. And I'm going to say while the answer is equal to yes, I want to do these things. And that's where I might want to, print out something. And maybe I want to still print out I don't know. There. And then I have to make sure that I increment I by 1. And I also have to initialize the value of I, otherwise it won't know where to start. So I'll do that up here. But now I'm going to have to ask some kind of a question. And so there's where I would want to put show an input dialog and ask the question of some sort. And then they'll type in an answer. And if they type in anything but yes, now here too, they might decide to use capital letters. So then I might use that code to change everything to smalls. I think that was code like this. or maybe it goes, now that I'm thinking of it, I want to change everything to lowercase, and then when it does the comparison, it will be in lowercase. And I have to remember to put that on, and I also realize that this is there. Let's try to compile that. Oh, by the way, there are some settings that you can change in your JGRAS that's going to make things a little bit easier for you, and I'll show you what that is. I have to save this program first. I'm going to bring this up here and compile it. Okay, so now when I run it, you can see that it gives me the initial value, and it asks me if I want to do this again, and if I type in yes with a capital Y, it changes it to all smalls, asks me if I want to do this again, and maybe I'll type in no, and now it stops. So that's how you can control a program. You can either use while loop, or you can use a for loop if you know ahead of time how many times you want to execute.